Thank you so much for being here. It's just such an honor and privilege to work with so many just well-respected and well-known people throughout the state and the city. And we just appreciate everyone's commitment to this work. This is the Operational Impacts Subcommittee of the Redding Consortium. I am your co-chair, Deirdre Joyner, Deputy Superintendent in the Christina School District. Bettina Riveros is my partner in crime there. And she is in my screen. She's like in the third row, but I'm sure you guys can locate her. So Bettina and I want to officially welcome you. And we have an hour of power that we like to call it, that we're gonna try to knock out some thinking, make some brain sweat, and kind of share some ideas for the next steps of this work. Our agenda today is the welcome and just a little overview of the Redding Consortium. If you have not been keeping up, we want to make sure that everyone is operating from the same space. Then we're going to do a lot of breakout time. You're going to break out in some groups to actually review the redistricting stipulations that this committee has been charged with. And we're just going to do some high level feedback on those stipulations. We'll go over that in just a second. After your breakout groups, we're going to share out, and then we'll talk about next steps. And then at the end of our time together, we're going to open it up to for public comment, as we do with all Redding Consortium meetings. But before we jump into the work, folks who know me know that we have to check in. We've got to get the space warmed up. It's been probably a long day, and we know it's about to snow. So with that said, tell me, what is your favorite winter activity? Your favorite winter activity. If you're able to type it in the chat, go ahead and do that. Those of you who have worked with me in meetings and districts do also know that I like to call on people. So let's try to, I'm going to call on Laura Burgos there. How are you? Good afternoon.
I am wonderful, and I just knew you were going to call on me. I felt that energy. I will be sure to pay it forward. Favorite winter activity? Well, I mean, indoors, I definitely like lighting the fireplace, gathering with the family, playing board games. That has been huge. Outdoors, love snow tubing. I have a little one at home, 4-year-old, so definitely love building snow mountains and whipping him around the sled. So lots of winter fun, not afraid of the snow.
Oh, nice. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'll be on the lookout for the payback. Mr. Simmons over there, our newly retired friend. How about you? Good afternoon. What do you enjoy doing in the winter?
Well, I put in the chat that my favorite winter activity is when the temperature goes above 45 and I can play winter golf. But on my but what I also enjoy doing, which is crazy, is when we get snow, I have a snow blower, so I blow my driveway and sidewalk and some of my elderly neighbors. And they always ask me, what do I want? And I always say nothing. But this year I got a nice bowl of soup. It was awesome. So I just enjoy doing that because, you know, like so many people need help and don't know where to turn to. And so it's just something easy to do that doesn't cost a thing for me.
That sounds awesome. Thank you for sharing. Let's try one more. Dr. George, how are you today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. What do you enjoy doing in winter?
Honestly, any opportunity I get, I try to get some rest because I'm such a busy person. I guess during the winter, I guess I'm like a bear. I try to hibernate.
Another good one with movies and all that great stuff. All right, and I'm sorry.
I said I'm fine with staying home. I don't get to be there much, so I'm happy being there.
Same here. I'm joined in person here today with Karen Eller, who's a friend to the Redding Consortium. What do you like to do?
I saw what Margie said with her husky. We love taking our senior pup outside, and she loves hopping around in the snow. So that's super awesome to do, and some nice cups of coffee on a snowy day.
You guys are a lot of fun. All right. Well, thank you to those that shared in the chat. Thank you for those who shared out loud. We're going to go ahead and move on, and I'm going to hand it over to Bettina, who's going to talk you through a little bit about the mission and the redistricting mandate, just to give a little bit of history and context about the work.
Thanks so much, Deirdre. I have such a dynamic and engaging co-chair in Deirdre, and I'm really appreciative for that. I am the Chief Health Equity Officer and lead public affairs as well at Christiana Care, and I'm privileged to participate with the Redding Consortium and to humbly co-chair this committee with Dr. Joyner. So Deirdre. So let's talk about the Redding Consortium, the mission, and the redistricting mandate. You may be quite familiar with this, but this goes back to 2019 at the Redding Consortium for Educational Equity, a word close to my heart as we think about equity in all things and in all places and in all policies. This was created to recommend those policies and practices in the education space to the Delaware General Assembly and the governor, in order to achieve education equity, and you can see there, and improve educational outcomes. Pre-K to 12, City of Wilmington and Northern Newcastle County, as we think about that geography. And this was laid out in the Senate bills. You can see the numbers there. And this consortium is mandated to address redistricting in Wilmington and Northern Newcastle County. And, you know, the history goes way back. I remember it back in the late 80s. I'm dating myself, but, you know, some of the work that was happening there in this space. And that's our charge. And we're very committed, obviously, to meeting that mandate and to working to advance equity and outcomes for all pre-K to 12th grade students in these areas. So let's talk a little bit about the structure of the Redding Consortium. There are, members. It is a member organization of the Redding Consortium, 28 members. That includes some 3 who are ex officio and non-voting. And these three active subcommittees were created. And this is one of them, the Operational Impacts Subcommittee. There are 2 others, as you can see, Fiscal Impacts and Community Engagement. And we obviously, Operational Impacts is quite significant there. That's why we have come together, and we need your expertise, your brains, your input as we work through the issues that we've been charged with addressing and making recommendations around. We're grateful to the staff support from UD and Del State University, and so really grateful to always have them at our side supporting this committee and this work.
And I'll take the next slide.
Thank you.
So the work is the result of decades of effort, as you all, or most of us, are probably aware. There's currently 28 separate governing units, including 16 located in the city of Wilmington, that are responsible for delivering public education to over 11,000 kids. And so while, of course, we've had progress and collaboration to support Wilmington students, the governance of these students, there's an opportunity to create more effective and equitable change. So the consortium's path forward right now is informed by over 20 years of reports and input by engaged community members and really passionate advocates like yourself. So Bettina will talk a little bit about the approved interim plan.
So there is, and I think that is an active link. Is that right? To our great team. Is that right, Haley?
Yep. So you can click that and it'll go right to the interim plan.
click on the interim plan, way back in May 9th, the consortium approved that the interim plan. And that includes these areas. And we've got 5 bullets outlined here. There's, that was in May. So it set forward a timeline to create the final redistricting plan in 18 months. This subcommittee structure that we just referenced, to create that redistricting plan related to the 13 stipulations. And those are 13 key areas laid out in the interim plan, which I'm sure you're likely familiar with. Really, that focus on 2 or fewer, basically two or one districts serving City of Wilmington students, and removing Christina School District from the City of Wilmington. Doing that landscape analysis. This is work I'm pretty familiar with in my role at Christiana Care, but that landscape analysis of social drivers of health and education, and that work is being done by AIR, American Institute of Research. And then that framework, as you can see here, around broader policy reforms. What does that look like? What are the policies that will drive, what are the policies around revenue, around state investment that's needed, around charter schools, around choice, and what is that broader policy framework that's necessary to support the recommended final redistricting plan? Oftentimes things don't, it's not just here's the plan. It needs a policy framework around it to make it successful. As far as this, is this mine? I believe this is also mine. We did split these up as we shared. I mentioned the 13 stipulations, and these are very specifically laid out. The ones that apply to our subcommittee, the Operational Impacts Subcommittee, address the 4 things on this page. And that's, I don't want to read these, that I will highlight them. It is the reassignment of students affected by the boundary change, and the reassignment of governance, and making that orderly and minimally disruptive to them and frankly to their families. The stipulation also provides that students can continue to attend the school they attended prior to the boundary change. And there's some other details in here around that. The third stipulation we're charged with is around student transportation. We know how essential that is. And having raised 4 kids, gratefully they're all in their 20s now, student transportation and how important that is. And then fourth, what that timeline looks like to implement the different elements of the redistricting plan, and who is responsible for what until full implementation. Anything you'd like to add there to my wonderful co-chair?
No, nothing to add. You did great.
We're a team. All right.
How about any questions from the group? You guys have any questions about the context before we jump into the breakout groups? Sure.
Yeah, I have one quick question. Item number 3 in there, that it states that one of the edicts is to have 2 or fewer districts serving the city. I was just wondering if that was a mistake, because we have Newcastle County, Votech, and Colonial. We all understand the removing of Christina, but we still have Colonial and Newcastle County. And in some of the proposals, it showed Brandywine, Red Clay, and Newcastle County Votech. So I'm wondering if that one isn't a type error.
Haley, can you help us with that language? I wonder if that meant the elementary or middle grades.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or if it included the Newcastle County Votech, which would have been Howard, just not sure.
I think that's a great question. I think we say 2 or fewer, we mean traditional school districts. I don't think there's any goal to reorganize or disrupt the Votech, but it's a great question. And I think the piece about Colonial is still sort of, I think that's up for conversation. I think they have maybe 300 or less Wilmington students, City of Wilmington students that they serve. So I think it's that sort of conversation of do they fit into the 2 or fewer conversation?
Okay.
That's helpful.
I just wanted to clarify that. I saw that last time.
Yeah, and John, that's a good clarifying question. Like my understanding, but we should confirm this, it was compared to the 4 that were originally created way back. But
Haley?
I'm open to others who have expertise greater than mine in this space.
Haley, this is Tika. Can you hear me?
Tika? Yes, we can hear you.
So I've had several conversations around that previously, and even asked for it to be clarified when we voted. So from what my understanding is, what it refers to is whether we were pretty much going to go to a county-wide district or some other district that would be, what was first floated was some of the schools going to Red Clay, some of the schools and the students going to Red Clay, some going to Brandywine. Then other people felt like that shouldn't be the right mix. Some should go to Colonial. So it was more around whether we were going to go down to a county district or whether it was going to be one of those other versions that did not include Christina. But it wasn't, the conversation wasn't encompassing high school.
I think that's partially accurate, but I don't know if it was, between a county and other things. I think previously the Redding co-chairs put some ideas out there, and I think why we went into sort of the subcommittee, 3 different subcommittees, was because people felt it was too fast. Like they said, we haven't really talked about all the different options. And so I think talking about it in a sense of 2 or fewer districts serving the city is sort of just giving a parameter for us to explore what those different options mean, and what will sort of through conversation ends up being the best. So not limiting thinking sort of right out of the box of county or or just Red Clay and Brandywine.
No, so they weren't saying just Red Clay and Brandywine. I think that was sort of the distinction, is whether it was going to be a county or then some other smaller makeup of 2. But what was very clear is that it would not include Christina. And the conversation, again, this just was the one I had last May and then also this fall, but it wasn't also a discussion in regards to high school.
I think there is a specific high school stipulation in one of the other ones. So the redistricting plan definitely covers high school and the need for, a tradition, or the potential for a need for a traditional public high school in the city, since there is not one currently. So it definitely covers high school.
Yeah, that is correct. It's just from what was had with me is that was like a separate conversation.
It's not within the purview of these specific stipulations, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be thinking about it. And it's definitely will be tied into the redistricting plan. I don't think it's a separate conversation. If that's helpful or more confusing, I'm not sure, but
that's fine. I think it's good for you to get some clarity on it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Tika. These are really helpful questions.
If I can jump in, initially it is K-8. Was the K-8 governance of the students in the city of Wilmington, with the understanding that's why the stipulation for high school was put in, was that something about high school would have to be included, because if you look at the 18-month timeline, those now 7th and 8th graders will be going to high school. And it's not to eliminate the schools that they're currently feeding in, it's just opening up the option for them to go to another option that the Redding Consortium provides from this work.
And to take that a step further, the operations committee, which would be, and its impact, which is us, is charged with those 4 stipulations as it relates to K-8 schools, because those are the ones that will need to be minimally disrupted and some transportation included and a plan for where they're going to go and those kinds of things. So that's why this piece is relevant. These 4 stipulations are relevant to the operational impact. Are there any other questions we can entertain before we go into our breakout rooms?
And just as a reminder, I did put here, just for these are the other stipulations for the other two committees, just if folks were interested. We don't have to read through them all, but it was just here. So if you sort of you don't see something covered in these four, you can look for them here. And there's always going to be some sort of like crosswalk as well between, you know, all the committees to be a cohesive plan.
Part of that goal, of course, is in redrawing those district boundaries, better serving the, you know, all the students' educational interests, but reducing the concentration of low-income students and improving educational services and supports for students at risk and for English learners as priorities identified in the plan.
Okay, so Haley, you want to move on to our next slide where I'll give you a little context for the breakout groups, and then you'll go ahead and try to get some work done here. So we're going to address the 4 stipulations. Each breakout group is going to be assigned 1 stipulation to focus on. In your breakout group, further clarify your stipulation by really simply asking or generating a list of questions or data sources that you think are going to need to bring that stipulation to life. Like, in order for that stipulation to be true, what questions need to be considered and what data needs to be gathered. Again, this is with the thinking that there are 2 or fewer districts in the city of Wilmington. In other words, what is the impact of removing the CSD footprint in Wilmington? So there is a Google Doc for notes, for capturing notes for each breakout group. Haley, would you show the breakout groups on the next slide so everyone knows where they're going? Haley's going to open these rooms. Our goal was to allow you to work for about 30 minutes. I'm looking at our time just to make sure we have time to share out and for public comment. We're probably going to shrink that to closer to 23 minutes, if that makes sense. We're going to be right to the minute there. You'll see these breakout groups. Make sure you pick the right group. And each one has its stipulation, correct, Holly? So group 1 is stipulation 1, or is it on there and is on their Google Doc as well, right? Want to clarify that for them?
Yes. So I couldn't make the breakout groups free, so I'm going to do that real quick right now. It'll just take a second, and then if you have the Google Doc open, I can drop it in the link. But just give me 1 second. But breakout group 1 will be in room 1, you know, room 2, breakout group 2. So let me just get that set up, and then we'll get you into your rooms.
And we are reserving time at the end for public comment.
Yes.
I'm just noting that.
We will. Yes, we will.
Okay.
So what is going to be helpful is if you take your Google Doc and make a copy, and then group 1 will do stipulation 1. Group 2 will do stipulation 2. Group 3 will do stipulation 3. And group 4 will do stipulation 4. And you have the PowerPoint. We can go back to that slide and show you those stipulations if you need us to make sure that you're commenting on the correct stipulation. There are guiding questions in the document as well. So you're gonna ask of the group those questions, and you're also going to answer them to the best of your ability. Again, noting what additional questions you have and what data sources are going to be needed in order to really address that stipulation. You'll want to nominate a note taker and a facilitator to help us move along and make the best use of time. We also recognize that you might not finish today, and we will add that to our next steps, where we will add another meeting date so that we are ready to join the consortium with all the subcommittees later in March. So with that said, breakout rooms are open. We wish you well.
Okay, so time for the share out. We have group 1, the orderly and minimally disruptive reassignment of students affected by the boundary change and the reassignment of governance responsibilities. Would you like to share any of your discussion and your report out from your meeting?
And I'm sharing the Google Doc. If that's unhelpful or if someone else wants to share it or talk through it, that's fine. But let me know.
Oh, are you starting with group 1?
Yes.
I'm sharing
Thanks,
group 1 if
Margie.
that's helpful.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just have a lot of questions because when we talk about being the least disruptive in this process, we do have a lot of questions regarding exactly whether the plan is being mandated, like which districts are going to acquire the students and or the buildings within the Christina School District. So is that something that we are going to recommend and therefore mandate? Do districts have the option to opt out if they don't want to be considered? And is there still the option of one district in the city of Wilmington? So we would need a clarification around exactly what's on the table so that we could truly come up with a plan that's not going to be as disruptive. We also talked about keeping students together in a building. So as opposed to redistricting based on residents, that we do it based on building. So students can stay with their classmates in their building. It eliminates transportation changes, but it also eliminates staffing changes. And then ultimately we needed additional data to understand where we stand. And we know that this landscape analysis that ARR is doing is going to give us some of these answers, but what is the building capacity? What's the current enrollment? But also what's the ideal enrollment? Because we talked about how even though a building could have the capacity for 1,000 students, it may not be ideal to have 1,000 students in that building based on class size. And then ultimately, what are the academic outcomes? Because over and over, we've heard from the community, what's going to change in this redistricting plan? Let's not just move students, but exactly how are we going to improve academic outcomes? Team, did I get that okay? Tika, Keenan?
You
Sounded
did.
great to
Awesome
me.
job. Yep.
Good. That's excellent. That last point that you raised, is that captured in here? Or is that further down?
It's she was going through the items in number 3.
Academic outcomes.
Okay, okay. Academic outcomes. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure you said that so well, Margie, like what will change. Not just the building, right? Not just the district, but what will change as far as academic outcomes. I thought that was really good. And you also mentioned about, is there a potential for one district, which possibly could be is captured here. Maybe we can make sure we've captured that. Great. Any other input that anyone on group 1 wants to provide, or we better move to group 2 because we're almost out of time. Group 2. Okay. Thank you, Margie. Really appreciate it. Group 2. I'm not going to read it given time. But this is around continuing their attendance. So would you want to share report out?
Sure. So I think if we can just scroll down a little bit, we had a number of questions. So the first one is currently in Chapter 6 of Title 14, it requires written consent from both the sending and the receiving district school boards to make a transition happen. So is that going to be the same thing for these schools and for this work, or is there going to be some type of expedited process that'll take place there? Currently, I believe when students are in special schools, they're transferring or moving from one district to another for the purpose of attending special schools. There's a more simplified process that doesn't currently require school board signatures and stuff like that. So that's what that question is around. Also, will there be an expedited process at DOE to verify tuition charges? So I believe in Chapter 6, Currently, it says that DOE, when there is this tuition charge being generated, that DOE reviews it and makes sure that it's correct within 20 days. So is that still going to be the case with these schools? Is that the right amount of time given the number of kids that potentially may move to or from different schools? Also, what support systems will be in place for students and families to ensure students are successful if they choose to stay in their current school or if they decide to move to another school? What happens if a family has students who end up being split between school districts just because of grade level that they're in? So you could potentially have one child in one district and another child in another district. So what systems of support will be set up for those families? What mechanisms will be in place to evaluate the effectiveness of this plan, and also ensuring that the families are given opportunities to weigh in about the effectiveness of it, so they have the chance to provide feedback. Will there be a decision date for when families need to make, or will there be a date for when families need to make a decision about whether or not they want their student to remain in the school or move to a new school? And then what does the communication system look like to educate families about those timelines, when everything would be due? Those types of things. Once a family decides whether the student will stay or change schools, will the student be required to stay for a certain period of time? So will they have to stay the entire grade band of that school that they chose to stay in? Or will they be able to leave perhaps at the end of the school year? Or what mechanism do they have? What will be required around that? How will student records be transferred from sending district to receiving district? Will there be a standardized process? Is there something that can be created or will be created to make that efficient? What does that timeline look like to ensure that all records are transferred over to the receiving district in a timely manner? And then what is the impact of the state transitioning to Infinite Campus, which is a new student information system? What is that transition? What's the impact of that transition on this work? When will families find? Yep.
Can you scroll up, please? Or down, I guess, down so we can see. Thanks. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, John.
That's all right. When will families find out about transportation times and bus routes to know what the impact of changing or staying in schools will be? So this idea that knowing when your child might get picked up in the morning or dropped off in the afternoon could have a major impact on a decision that a family makes to either stay or leave. So when would that information go to families so that they would know what that impact would look like? And then is there the potential for overcrowding if a large number of students choose to stay in the school that they're currently in, and then things get kind of redistricted? Data needs, we were talking about data around how many students are interested in moving schools or staying in schools. This might be for one of the other groups, but what is the cost of transporting students for this initiative? Again, the bus routes and numbers of students that would be on each of those bus routes, and then any historical data on tuition payments made from sending to receiving districts, just to know kind of what the potential there is for that. I think that was it. Anything from my group? Anybody else?
No, I think you captured it all. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have the link, so I was trying to follow on the screen. I would have jumped in there and tagged in.
All good. Appreciate that, Dr. Woods. Quite a comprehensive list. We're both groups, really thoughtful input. Thank you.
Yes.
Moving on to group 3. Go ahead. If you can take a couple minutes to highlight yours, and you can pick this up as you wish, Deirdre. All right.
I can jump in, and for our 3 other team members, feel free to fill in the blanks. We initially began, I mean, we have a long list of data and, deeper knowledge that we'd like to see. We want to revisit the state code around what entitles a student for busing transportation and what that means across various grade levels. We want to better understand our current existing district partnerships with local bus companies. What will it look like going forward? We really want to hear from our families and really start there. So we did get off from the transportation conversation just a little bit as we better understand family needs and what's going to be compelling, what's the compelling narrative around families' choice to change schools or remain at their current schools. What role does how does transportation factor into that decision? Quickly, number two, what we need to know in order to understand the stipulation. We'd love to see some audits on current busing capacity, auditing on transportation services in general. We want to consult with current transportation supervisors. What are the parameters of the existing busing contracts that each district has, including costs? What implications will this have for each of the participating or impacted districts' budgets? How many families are currently considering transportation now or for the future? What are the needs that we know of? And what does this mean for school needs after hours in terms of supporting athletic and other programs? Number three, identifying specific data. It's a endless list. We need to know specifically the number of students affected. What kind of scenario planning has occurred in terms of understanding those students and families that will remain at their current schools versus those that may potentially leave? What are all the different potential scenarios? Currently, what are the number of students attending their neighborhood schools versus those who are traveling and choicing elsewhere? And what factors, currently influence choice as it relates to transportation? We need to get into the weeds. We need to better understand current bus routes, the stops, schedules, current school bell schedules, capacity, staffing, the existing number of buses and transportation staff. And then finally, and I noted this, a reimagining and interrogation of the current relationship between transportation, school start and end times, activities, and instructional hours. That's an important conversation to have. In my opinion, we cannot continue having school start times 9:30 a.m. That's a late start, in my opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of the group. Anyone else want to add anything?
The data for displaced, I'm sorry, the data for displaced families
in all these conversations, we have to make sure we're not forgetting about our unhoused families and unaccompanied students across the city. Transportation, meeting them where they are, communicating with them, engaging, providing transportation to events if there's community engagement events.
Just making sure you heard that the comment was around making sure we don't lose sight of our displaced families, those who need specialized transportation, things like that.
Mhm.
Thank you, Laura. Group 3, nice work. Group 4. Anyone here from Group 4?
I guess I'll speak. We didn't appoint a
Okay.
speaker, but our biggest question is for the timeline. It's very difficult to discuss timeline when we don't know what the option is. So we felt that there was an issue that we had there, but we did discuss that it would have to be in 4 phases. That the first phase would be a planning and assessment, because each district that's impacted would have to plan. For some districts, they might have to redraw feeder patterns and other items. The second item would be community engagement. We've got to survey the parents to see, those impacted families from Christina. Some may decide to stay in their school, some may decide to move on. 3, there's a legal and a policy period that we have to go through. What are the policies around this? and the legal side of this, because we're talking about various union contracts. There's a lot that's going to go on with these moving pieces. And the last phase is implementation. We had some issues with the Google Docs, so we'll go back and type this in. But one of the items that we had spent quite a bit of time talking about is one of the edicts of this group was not to it's not in our assignment to discuss capacity of the schools. And I'm glad to see that some of the other groups had mentioned that. And I spoke to Namdi about this after one of the meetings. And, you know, we can discuss this afterwards if this is something I would take on. I'm a facilities guy. I've been doing this for 22 years. But DOE would tell you that Harlan Elementary can hold 650 students. I will tell you that the best outcome for kids is to have the school where we are now, which is at 380, because we have services in the school that really help those kids, and that impacts the DOE capacity. So whenever we talk about city schools and are there room for these students in the different places, if we use the DOE standards, it's not going to equate to the best outcome for students, because we have so many other staff members we're putting in these schools. We're trying to get that student to teacher ratio down, and we've added additional educators there through the Wilmington Collaborative and through other grant monies to provide more services for these students. So I really think the DOE model, this committee, we should come out of this committee saying the DOE model does not work for this. And that was something I was going to also say during public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And then there's also some notes from group 4 in the chat that were put in by Ms. Ray Avery Jones. All right, Haley, we have reported out from all groups. How about going over the next steps for us before we jump into public comment?
Perfect. Will do. Yeah, thanks for an awesome discussion and share out. That was really, it was so great to hear everyone's thoughts and ideas and feedback. So the next steps, we'll review all the feedback. I'll have my wonderful student Jenna, I can make this bigger. My wonderful student Jenna, she's an undergraduate at UD. She'll be supporting this work group along with me, and she can review the recording, review the worksheet, and make sure we captured everyone's thoughts and ideas, and collate that, synthesize that. And so that'll be sort of the next step. And then we have also a data tracker Excel sheet. So we're kind of monitoring data across the subcommittees as well, and seeing what similar questions come up and what similar data comes up. So we're not asking, different people for different things and different people for the same thing. So sort of a uniform process for that. Then I think the next step will be to schedule the next subcommittee meeting for all of us. Doodle poll may be easiest, and I don't know if Deirdre or Bettina want to talk about sort of open it up to cadence for this group of when that should be, or if we can do that sort of via email in the poll. And I think the next subcommittee meeting might also be informed by the subcommittee retreat, which is going to be on March 15th. It'll be a fun working day. You should all, if you haven't already, you should all receive information about that soon from Elena Robinson. But it's going to be a subcommittee retreat where all 3 subcommittees come together to sort of discuss these questions that have been popping up and see what similar questions are coming up, and also sort of talk to a point that Margie made earlier, and we've all been discussing, but what is the approach? What are sort of the approach options? How are we defining them, and how can we further define to then make sort of our answers to these stipulations make the most sense? And we'll also hear from AAR at the retreat. Yeah, so I think that should really help sort of propel the path forward. And I think those are the next steps. Any questions or thoughts?
Thanks so much, Haley. And Deirdre, should we go into public comment or anything else you want to say to close out the meeting?
We can. I think the only other unanswered question was, did we feel like we needed to get together as a team before the March 15th date? If you all really felt like you had an opportunity to talk out enough in your breakout groups. If you feel like you need another meeting, we're happy to send out a dual poll to do that. Otherwise, we think Bettina and Haley and I have enough information to synthesize to share out your answers to the questions on March 15th.
If I could respond to that, what would be great is to evaluate options. Like if we knew, hey, these are 4 options that are being looked at, these are 3, then concrete answers can be given. So I think unless we receive them earlier, I think it's difficult to move forward till we see those options.
Okay, we'll make sure we share all of that March 15th and then have next steps after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's a great point, John. And a goal of the 15th, as of now, as I understand it, is to have some more concrete language around those options. So that makes total sense. Didn't mean to cut you off, Deirdre, sorry.
No problem, no problem. I was just going to turn it over to public comment if there is any.
I see Monica's hand raised.
Okay.
Hello. I just wanted to thank you guys for the work. I know how busy you all are as I delve deeper into board work and working with districts and across the state. I'm just thankful that you're being able to put this time in, and it's so important. I saw lots of good questions. I think there's lots of answers to some of those, but there's definitely some more things that we need to be looking at. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
The only comment I was going to make is I've been attending these meetings since they started, and I think the most important thing is that at the end of the day is whatever happens, that it's best for students and what's best for education. And there are various models throughout the city. We have 1st through 8th grade schools. We have K through 5. We have all these different models. And I just don't know that we're discussing what's best for the kids and what's best for families. But I know one thing that's best that I've seen is some of the DOE models do not work for this when we have to provide so many other services. And I just hope we can leave this with a recommendation that kids and families will be set up for what's best for them and be given choice. And you know, what I spoke to earlier about capacity is 650 kids at Harlan will not result in the best outcome for kids. So I just wanted to throw out there, I don't know what the consultant's doing, but we have great space planners and other people who reside in the city of Wilmington who work for firms who space plan for all the districts. So I don't know if there's any appetite for that or if that's at another point during this process, but really making sure that whatever we do is best for kids and best for the schools.
Thank you, John. Is there any other public comment? Well, on behalf of Bettina and Haley and I, we want to thank you not only for being here today, but for allowing us to withdraw time from your bank and deposit into the account of the city, the students of the city of Wilmington. So thank you so much for staying 17 minutes over. We appreciate that. Haley's contact information is on the slide if you need to reach out. We'll be in touch after the March 15th meeting with next steps when we get our marching orders for this breakout committee. Once again, thank you so much. We appreciate you and have a great night.